Come in, Fran.
Hey, Dr. Penny. Thanks for meeting with me.
Yeah. Welcome. So what can I help you with?
I am really having a tough time in biochem right now.
Okay.
And I don't know what it is that I'm doing that is wrong that I can kind of get help with.
Okay, well let's start talking about, when you say that you're doing poorly, what parts of biochemistry are you having trouble with?
Well, it seems like I spend all my time studying, and no matter what happens, I keep reviewing and keep studying, and then when I get into the test, I can't remember anything. I just go completely blank.
How are you studying for biochemistry? What are things that you do that you're doing both to learn the biochemistry but also to prepare for your exam?
Well, usually I start reading like at the beginning of the unit, and I just go through the PowerPoint slides, and then I make notes from there. So I start just kind of going through lectures, and then I write out the objectives and just try to memorize all the different cycles and all the different things that we're focusing on.
Okay, how long does that take you to get through?
I don't know. It takes me, basically as soon as one exam ends, I just start studying for the next one. So it takes quite a while.
Okay. What about during the exam? Do you feel like you had enough of time on the exam? Did you feel rushed?
I definitely, I feel rushed. I can't get through all the questions, and I have a really difficult time focusing on the questions, and then I don't even get through all of them by the time the exam time's over.
Okay, so when we're going through questions on your exam, are there things that you find that are difficult for you going through the question?
Probably reading through it is probably my biggest struggle.
Okay.
I've never been a really strong reader, and like all the things that we have to go through, we have to do a lot of reading, so that's probably my biggest issue.
Okay. A lot of times, students aren't really used to the application type questions. Do you feel like it's what the question's asking you to do, or just getting through the question that's the problem?
Probably getting through the question, understanding what the question is asking,
Okay.
and being able to answer it from there.
Has this always been an issue for you? I know that you said that you had difficulty being a strong reader for a while, but the actual getting through the exam questions, is that something that's new to you now, or is that something that's always been the case?
It's kind of always been an issue, but it's definitely gotten worse. And like I know my brother was diagnosed with ADHD, so I know that I myself have some trouble focusing as well, but I don't know if that might be part of it too, or if it is just my reading.
Okay. Do you feel like you're a slow reader or a distracted reader?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay. Do you find that you do activities that aren't just reading when you're studying? Do those tend to work better for you?
No. If I do something, if I see something else going on, I find it really difficult to keep studying, and I kind of get distracted, so I kind of have to find a quiet place where I can study that there aren't a lot of people around.
Okay.
So if I have multiple things going on, I definitely can't get any studying going.
Okay.
What are things that you pulled out that you've identified in this scenario that are key issues to your conversation with the student? Yeah.
I kind of keyed on her first comment of I study, but when I get in there, I can't remember anything.
Yeah.
So what immediately came to mind is test anxiety.
Sure.
So that's one of the first things.
And as far as test anxiety, where might you refer that student if you feel like that might be something relevant?
Well, if it's biochemistry course, I'd send them, possibly to the biochemistry.
Yeah. So anytime a student's having course-related trouble, you can always send them to that course faculty. We do also have a department on campus that deals with test anxiety. We do sometimes make referrals So if you happen to send them to us and it does end up being more of a text anxiety thing, we can make that referral from that point. So definitely don't fret over that decision too much. But the counseling center would be another area that can talk about test anxiety. As soon as a student brings up, hey, there's this disability that I might have, that sort of changes the conversation a little bit. So, student mentioned ADHD. Here's the fun part for you. You don't have to determine if that's even true, okay? It's not your job to determine that, and you won't be able to see the documentation that would help you determine that. If the student feels like sharing, hey, look, I have been diagnosed with this thing, they can do that. You probably shouldn't ask a bunch of prying questions about what their disability is. That might be an ADA thing. But if they want to share that with you as the advisor, they could certainly do that. Okay, so for an ADHD, excuse me, then this goes back to your reading difficulty point that you had identified, or the other issues as far as core-specific biochemistry. That could be consistent with ADHD. Okay, so try to look for some consistencies throughout what they're saying. And then the other one, they primarily use reading to study. And this is something a lot of our students do. And this is not on its own necessarily a bad thing. The problem is that if we only use one method to study, we are probably not getting the most out of that opportunity. Okay? We want to try to diversify some of the things that we're doing. Okay, so working with our peers, creating tables, going through some more active studying strategies. Okay? This is one that we might look at to say, maybe we should look at some study skills. Again, that's us, so the referral doesn't really matter. Maybe an accommodations thing, maybe a test anxiety thing. Also, because she identified biochemistry as her subject area, talk to the biochemistry faculty or the faculty that are responsible for teaching that course to say maybe there are things inside of biochemistry. One of our students brought Lippincott as a study book to us from the biochemistry faculty this year. And now we have that available for a lot of our other students as well. So sometimes the faculty in your area may have a better resources than we've even heard of yet. Okay? When you respond, you're trying to determine the root problem that the student has. Okay? Again, without too much prying. You need as much information as you can get to determine where you need to send them. Okay? It's not your job to be an expert in every area, but determine where you need to send them for further assistance. We also don't want to insinuate a learning disability for a student that hasn't offered it. Okay, so if a student says, I have trouble reading, maybe you have ADHD, could be seen as sort of an insult to that student. Okay? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter if they have ADHD because it doesn't change your encounter at that moment. Okay? Lastly, be knowledgeable and informative. We do have a brand new accommodations and educational programming policy. Most of you have gotten a chance to hear about that. We are also adding in temporary medical to that as well, so students that might have had an accident or surgery. So that policy will be going live here in the near future. Anytime you have a student that's requesting an accommodation to the curriculum, we like to keep documentation of that for somewhat obvious reasons. For follow-up, you should probably follow up. This is a student that identified, I'm really struggling in this area. I've got a bunch of different possible things that could be the problem. Importantly, for an accommodations piece, we probably don't want to follow up with that too much. You could ask them if they've applied for accommodations or things of that nature, but we don't want to harp on that too much. Again, ADA. This student, it's entirely possible that this student has never actually had a barrier of reading. Okay, that is that oftentimes an undergraduate, especially in K-12, what they're usually asked to do is regurgitation. That is, I've heard the answer, I recognize the answer, I can give the answer. What we're usually asking students to do is different. That is, you've heard the information, I want you to integrate the information, I want you to apply the information, and I want you to actually synthesize something new with that information. That requires a lot more layers of complexity for the student that they may not have had before. It requires a lot more intricate details that they may not have had to need before. So we see a lot of advanced students that are very smart, that's why they're here, but they've never been challenged in the way that we're challenging them. And so oftentimes some of those can pop up. This isn't a huge issue on campus. We don't have a ton of students walking around with accommodations, but it does pop up. And as the DSM-5 now gets better understood more, there are more sort of personality quirk type disabilities that are coming out that might be more relevant for us in the